After Juneau, our second port of call is Skagway. Located in a narrow glaciated valley at the head of the Taya Inlet, Skagway is about 90 miles northwest of Juneau. It is at the north end of the Lynn Canal, which is the most northern fjord on the Alaska Southeast Inside Passage. Skagway is a city rich in history. It is the setting for a number of movies and books, including Jack London's bestseller, The Call of the Wild. A significant number of buildings are preserved as part of the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park. With a population of about 1,200, the city plays host to 1 million visitors from all over the world, arriving by cruise ships, airplanes, and cars in summer months. While jewelry shops in Juneau know the secret of happy wife, happy life, stores in Skagway provide special chairs for husbands to allow ample time for their spouses to shop at leisure. From the excitement of the gold rush to transportation and to tourism, Skagway has long provided more than one avenue to wealth. But by far the most fascinating story is how the city became the place where the road to gold began. The Alaskan coast mountains, with precipitous peaks and massive glaciers, present a nearly impenetrable barrier. However, a few ice-free river valleys pierce this rugged landscape. Since prehistoric times, the coastal Tlingit natives traded extensively with the inland Tagish First Nations using the Chilkoot Corridor, beginning at nearby Daia. The White Pass Corridor that began in Skagway was also used, but not so much. These routes allowed trade and cultural exchange to develop between peoples on both sides of the mountains. In the second half of the 19th century, American prospectors began using the Chilkoot Trail to search for gold in the interior. One prominent resident of early Skagway was William Moore, a former steamboat captain. In 1887, a Tagish native guided Captain Moore over the White Pass. Captain Moore believed that tremendous gold discoveries would occur in the north, and he intended to capitalize on the hopes for a rush of prospectors. He saw the huge potential of the Skagway Valley with its deep water harbor and access to the interior. With this vision in mind, William Moore and his son Bernard filed a 160-acre land claim at the mouth of the Skagway River in Alaska. Moore settled in this area because he believed it provided the most direct route to the potential gold fields. With the help of a Tlingit native, Captain Moore and his son built a log cabin, a sawmill, and a wharf in anticipation of future gold prospectors passing through. Captain Moore is quoted by his son Bernard as saying, "I fully expect, before many years, to see a pack trail through this pass, followed by a wagon road, and I would not be at all surprised to see a railroad through to the lakes." On August 16, 1896, gold was discovered by local miners in the Klondike region of Canada's Yukon Territory. In 1897, when the steamer Portland arrived in Seattle with a ton of Klondike gold, it became an event being reported in the headline of the July 17th edition of the Seattle newspaper. This news of extraordinary gold discoveries in Canada's Yukon Territory spread like a wildfire. It triggered a stampede of prospectors, and overnight, the mad rush to the Klondike was underway. People across the globe raced to the Klondike, hoping to become rich beyond their wildest dreams. Thousands boarded ships, steamed up Alaska's Inside Passage. Just a couple of weeks later, on July 29, 1897, the steamer Queen docked at Captain Moore's wharf with the first boatload of prospectors. More ships brought thousands of hopeful miners into the new town of Skagway. To reach the Klondike, Yukon, prospectors had to choose between two routes. One was the 33-mile Chilkoot Trail out of Dyea, containing a tortuous 1,000-foot climb known as the Golden Stairs. The alternative was the 45-mile White Pass Trail, starting in Skagway. It was infamously named the Dead Horse Trail because pack animals perished in large numbers. Legend has it that line is too steep for a goat and too cold for a polar bear. The prospectors climbed the mountains over the White Pass, above Skagway, and onward across the Canada-US border to Bennett Lake, British Columbia, where they built boats and floated 550 miles through the lake systems and down the Yukon River to reach the gold fields around Dawson City, Yukon. To reach the gold fields, each prospector was required by the Canadian authorities to bring a year's supply of food in order to prevent starvation. Altogether, the Klondikers' equipment weighed close to a ton. The Klondike Gold Rush was a migration by an estimated 100,000 prospectors to the Klondike region of Yukon between 1896 and 1899. Some prospectors got rich, but the majority never became rich. News of the Klondike Gold Rush reached London, England in the summer of 1897, and with it came Captain Moore's dream of a railroad through the White Pass to the Yukon. Initially, a survey team, after assessing the terrain, concluded that a railway through the White Pass could not be built. Michael Henney, a young Canadian railway contractor who had completed an independent survey of the White Pass, was convinced that a railway could be built. In May 1898, work started on what has been described as the toughest railway construction job ever undertaken. The great crews blasted and hacked their way through the virgin granite, at times hanging by ropes to double-jack blast holes into the sheer cliffs. With nothing but horses, black powder, and men, the grade advanced, and by June 1899, construction reached Lake Bennett, 40 miles north of Skagway, where the first ceremonial spike was driven home. On July 29, 1900, after 26 months of toil, the golden spike was driven home at Carcross, Yukon, and within a few minutes, a train was dispatched with the company's first load of through freight. It took 2 years, 110 miles of track, 35,000 workers, tons of dynamite, and the determination of contractor Michael Henney before railroad reached Whitehorse, Canada. By the time the railroad was completed, the Klondike Gold Rush was almost over. However, the White Pass and Yukon route dominated transportation throughout much of Skagway's history. As the cornerstone of the first fully integrated transportation system in the north, the White Pass and Yukon route operated continuously from 1900 until October 1982. With tourism on the rise, increasing numbers of cruise ships brought ever greater numbers of passengers to ride the historic train excursions to the summit and beyond. July 29, 2000 marks the centennial of driving the last spike at Carcross, Yukon, Canada. The White Pass and Yukon route is one of the most scenic and historic railroads in North America. An astounding engineering achievement, the White Pass was honored with the designation as one of the top international civil engineering landmarks in the world.
Years before the Klondike Gold Rush, the Quinkets First Nation over the White Pass forever tore the shroud of secrecy imposed by the Quinkets and shared this knowledge with the world.
Thank you for watching and listening. Please subscribe to this channel, Words of Woods.